go a little bit deeper into the Srimad Bhagavatam and try to study different topics. It's very helpful and it's very absorbing. So I'll offer our respects to Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this evening we'll be speaking from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 33. And the chapter is entitled Activities of Kapila. And within that chapter, we have 6 verses that are the prayers of Devahuti. And now, if we all remember from Srimad Bhagavatam, from the third canto, we hear a lot about Devahuti. She is the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, and she is the wife of Kardama Muni. And her qualities are described in this third canto, and she is a very exceptional personality. And when Kardama Muni was searching he had the desire in his heart to find a wife of like-mindedness, of similar quality to himself. And then Swayambhuva Manu came to him and offered him his daughter, Devahuti. Now, Devahuti was a princess. And her father is a very extraordinary personality, so much opulence. And Kardama Muni, he was an ascetic. And yet she took her position of service to him very, very deeply, very seriously. She followed his austerities in all ways. She just served him as he was going about his severe penances and meditations. And it's described in the Bhagavatam that she was serving him in such a way that she completely neglected her own self-care. She became emaciated. She was just so focused on his service. And Kardama Muni, when he noticed this, he was overwhelmed with affection, and he blessed her. And he said to her, you have been acquiring so much devotional merit all of this time simply by serving me. And now I will give you the fruit of that. You'll be able to see that. And it was both of their desire that they have a very qualified son. And as we know from their pastime, Kardama Muni, he provided very well for his wife in very exceptional ways. And they had very qualified daughters, and they also had Kapila appear as their son. Now, even though an expansion of the Supreme Lord, Kapila Dev, appeared as their son, Kardama Muni, he was very renounced, and he had an agreement already with Devahuti that after she bears a son, then he would leave. So even though the Supreme Lord himself, Lord Kapila, took birth as their son, Kardama Muni left. When Kapila Dev was a little bigger, then Kardama Muni left home. And as he's leaving, he prays to Lord Kapila Dev, just let me remain in remembrance of you. He's a very extraordinary devotee, extraordinary personality. So when Kardama Muni leaves home, then Devahuti, she is missing him. And she is meditating on the fact that I saw him as my husband, but he's the most exalted devotee, and I didn't get all the spiritual instruction from him that I could have. So she approaches her son, Kapila Dev, in a very submissive spirit and asks for spiritual enlightenment. She asks to receive spiritual knowledge from him. And then we have so many chapters in the Bhagavatam where we hear Lord Kapila Dev's instructions to his mother Devahuti. And very wonderful instructions, very philosophical, very deep, explaining the whole process of devotional service. And after she receives all of this knowledge from her very exalted son, she then in turn offers prayers to him. And her prayers are very interesting. They're very succinct. I was really impressed by this, because she's heard so much knowledge from her son, and she is enlightened. She's fully realized. She's a fully realized personality. And in 6 verses, she glorifies him. And so we'll go through those verses. It's very difficult to do it justice in a short time. So I apologize for that already. You know, when we give Bhagavatam class, usually it's like 1 verse and you give class for like 40 minutes to an hour, something like that. But here we've got 6 verses, 6 very deep verses, and not so much time. So we'll try and go through them. And some may be a little, a little less in depth, and then some others will try and go a little deeper. But this is chapter 33 of the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So when Devahuti, she expresses these prayers to Lord Kapila, first of all, she offers her obeisances unto him. And the verse, this is the first verse of the 33rd chapter, says that she offers her obeisances unto the Lord, the author of the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is the background of liberation. So Srila Prabhupada, he says in the purport there that the specific significance of this system of Sankhya philosophy is stated as this word siddhim bhumin, that is the background of salvation, and that people who are suffering in this material world because they are conditioned by the material energy can easily get freedom from the clutches of matter by understanding this Sankhya philosophy. So this is the importance of this Sankhya philosophy that Devahuti has heard. And Srila Prabhupada states here in the purport that by understanding this Sankhya philosophy, then one can be liberated, in a liberated condition, even within this realm, even still within their body. And this is what happened to Devahuti. So she, after hearing from her son and after understanding, really imbibing all of the teachings from Lord Kapila, she is now Jivan Mukta. She is a fully liberated personality, even while she's still within that body. So she is has complete realization. So what we hear from her in the following 6 verses are her realizations, her devotional realizations, her realizations of the Supreme Lord's position, and her wonder at the Supreme Lord's sweetness. So just in a few verses, we get so much explanation. So many things are there. So Devahuti, she begins by saying, this is the second text. She begins by saying, Brahma is said to be unborn because he takes birth from the lotus flower, which grows from your abdomen, while you lie in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. But even Brahma simply meditated upon you, whose body is the source of unlimited universes. So here we hear Devahuti is expressing the Lord's position. So the Lord's body is the source of all universes. And even though such a great personality as Lord Brahma, who is Aja, he is the unborn, because he is born not from any regular mother and father, but he is born simply from the body of the Lord, from the lotus stem. So Lord Brahma, he's the firstborn personality, that he's described as unborn. And Devahuti is expressing Brahma's position. What an exalted personality. He's the firstborn person. And yet what does he do? He simply meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here we have this, an explanation of such a great personality as Lord Brahma. But what does that great personality do? What is that personality's relationship with the Supreme Lord? He simply meditates on him. So what then is the position of the Supreme Lord? This is Mother Devahuti's prayer. She is recognizing, she is glorifying the position of the Lord as the source of everything, the source of unlimited universes, the one on whom even the greatest personalities are always meditating. And it's when we meditate on that ourselves, we get a little insight into what is the Lord's position. Even the greatest personality, the firstborn personality, all he can do is meditate on the Supreme Lord. And we have throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have this wonderful prayers from Lord Brahma to the Supreme Lord, his prayers for creative impetus, full of the seed verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, full of realization. We have the whole Brahma Samhita. This is Lord Brahma's meditation. And so for us, also, that should be a real impetus. Wow, Krishna's position is so exalted. And in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says there that when one understands the greatness of the Lord, then one becomes fixed in worship of the Lord. Because when we understand how great he is, then naturally our desire to worship him, to serve him, comes up. If we're thinking, well, Krishna's just sort of, he's not that great, or he's kind of like me, or whatever material conceptions we may attach to the Supreme Lord, then that desire to actually serve, to really serve, is not very strong. We'll find that our desire is weak to serve the Lord. But when we understand the Lord's position, his greatness, then we want to serve. And this is what Mother Devahuti is expressing, the position of the Lord, and then that desire of service that comes from understanding that. So straight away we have a very deep prayer offered by Mother Devahuti. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, in these purports actually, if you go through these verses, Srila Prabhupada, he gives a small summary of what Devahuti is saying to Kapila Dev. And that's very wonderful, because it's not like he's just repeating the verse. He's actually opening up that verse and really explaining what is Devahuti really saying here. And part of the purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada explains that Devahuti is saying, you are the background of all the material manifestation and all created energy. As we heard her say, everything is emanating from the Supreme Lord. So therefore, you're delivering me from the clutches of Maya by explaining the Sankhya philosophy is not very astonishing. So Prabhupada's really giving us an insight into her mood here. So she's recognizing the position of the Lord. It's saying, everything's emanating from you, everything's coming from you. Therefore, you're explaining all this philosophy to me. That's not very astonishing. But what is the astonishing thing? Srila Prabhupada says, in the next sentence, he says, Devahuti says, but your being born from my abdomen is certainly wonderful, because you're the source of all creation. You have so kindly taken birth as my child, and that is wonderful. Your body is the source of the universe, and still you put your body within the abdomen of a common woman like me. To me, that is most astonishing. So we have this, what would we do without our founder Acharya, without Srila Prabhupada's explanations? We would simply skim along the surface of a lot of the verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. But Srila Prabhupada, by using the commentary of all the Acharyas and bringing everything together, his realization, then we get an insight, a real insight into the dynamic between this relationship between Devahuti and Kapila Dev. And that she is approaching Kapila Dev with this sense of astonishment. You're the source of all creation. Everything rests in you. Everything comes from you. And yet you put yourself within my abdomen. Isn't that astonishing? So it's a very intimate prayer. Like we chant in the Dhammadarastikam, that Krishna's belly is the abode of the entire universe. Yes. So he is the abode of the entire universe, and yet he puts himself within the womb of a mother, of an extraordinarily qualified devotee who can be his mother. So this is wondrous. This is wonderful. Devahuti goes on to explain a little about the Lord's energies. And she says in the third text, she says, "My dear Lord, although personally you have nothing to do, you have distributed your energies in the interactions of the material modes of nature. And for that reason, the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation takes place. My dear Lord, you are self-determined and are the Supreme Personality of Godhead for all living entities. For them you created this material manifestation, and although you are one, your diverse energies can act multifariously. This is inconceivable to us." So, although Devahuti is expressing that this is inconceivable to her, she very clearly has deep realization of the Lord's position. And as Lord Kapiladev has explained to her all the workings of the material modes of nature, she has full understanding of how the Lord's energies are working. And she is expressing here, Srila Prabhupada brings out in the purport that Devahuti is expressing here that although she's praying to the Lord like this, although you are personally not doing anything, your determination is absolute. There is no question of your fulfilling your will with the help of anyone else besides yourself. You are, in the end, the Supreme Soul and the Supreme Controller. Your will, therefore, cannot be checked by anyone else. So this is a very wonderful quality of Krishna. And this is a quality that really, really sets us worlds apart from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he can fulfill his will without anybody else's help. Yes, he's maintaining everything just by his energies. By his different energies, everything is going on in this whole cosmic manifestation, unlimited universes, material world, spiritual world, everything is happening simply by the Lord's energies. And, he has, as we know from Shastra, Krishna has unlimited desires, but he has the unlimited capacity to fulfill those desires. Whereas the living entities, we may have not even so many desires, but we have desires, but we do not have the capacity to fulfill them on our own. We're constantly having to reach outside of ourselves for fulfillment, but the Supreme Lord is not like that at all. He can fulfill his will, he can fulfill all of his desires, and that is his position. He can have unlimited desires, fulfill them all, and then create unlimited more desires, fulfill them all. So we are very, very different to the Lord in this sense. And then in the fourth text, Devahuti, she goes into this wonder that the Lord has appeared from her abdomen. And Srila Prabhupada gives a very sweet purport. So I'll read the purport as well as the text. It's a short purport. So Devahuti says, "As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you have taken birth from my abdomen. O my Lord, how is that possible for the Supreme One, who has in his belly all the cosmic manifestation? The answer is that it is possible, for at the end of the millennium, you lie down on the leaf of a banyan tree, and just like a small baby, you lick the toe of your lotus foot." So we see here her motherly affection relationship with the Supreme Lord. She's praying in this way, again expressing her wonder. How have you taken birth from my abdomen, from my womb? But yes, that is possible, because at the end of the millennium, then we see sometimes Krishna lies down. We have this beautiful picture in Prabhupada's books of the little baby Lord laying down in this huge waves on the banyan leaf and sucking on his toe. So Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, at the time of dissolution, the Lord sometimes appears as a small baby, lying on the leaf of a banyan tree, floating on the devastating water. Therefore, Devahuti suggests, your lying down within the abdomen of a common woman like me is not so astonishing. You can lie down on the leaf of the banyan tree and float on the water of a devastation as a small baby. It is not very wonderful, therefore, that you can lie down in the abdomen of my body. You teach us that those who are very fond of children within this material world and who therefore enter into marriage to enjoy family life with children can also have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their child. And the most wonderful thing is that the Lord himself licks his toe. Very, very sweet and deep interaction that we're getting an insight here again with Srila Prabhupada's purport. It's one more paragraph to the purport. Prabhupada says, since all the great sages and devotees apply all energy and all activities in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, there must be some transcendental pleasure in the toes of his lotus feet. The Lord licks his toe to taste the nectar for which the devotees always aspire. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself wonders how much transcendental pleasure is within himself, and in order to taste his own potency, he sometimes takes the position of tasting himself. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, but he appears as a devotee to taste the sweetness of the transcendental mellow in himself, which is tasted by Srimati Radharani, the greatest of all devotees. So by Srila Prabhupada's purport, we get such a deep entrance into this prayer. That what is there? What is that taste on the toes of the Supreme Lord that the Lord himself wants to lick his own toe? So the Lord wants to taste that taste that the devotees are all trying for, because by performing devotional service, we say again and again, we want to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. So there is taste there, as we all know, in the devotional service of the Lord. It's very tasty. We become satisfied by serving Krishna. Oh, excuse me. We become satisfied by serving Krishna. So there is great taste there in serving the Lord's lotus feet. And sometimes Krishna himself wants to taste that. And we know this is one of the internal reasons for the Lord's appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he wants to taste the love of his dearmost devotee. He wants to take the position of being a devotee so that he can understand. But just as I mentioned before, this is Krishna's supreme opulence, that he has this desire, right? I want to be able to understand the feelings that my devotees have. So boom, he can become Lord Chaitanya. He can take the position of Lord Chaitanya and fully experience love for Krishna, although he is Krishna himself. So this is such a wonderful, deep insight and explanation into this prayer from Mother Devahuti, that everything is there in the Supreme Lord. We see this is her expression of her realization after hearing all of this philosophy on devotional service from her very exalted son. So just in a few verses, we get a real deep insight into her understanding and her realization of the Supreme Lord. And as we spoke in the beginning, she is Jivan Mukta. She is a liberated personality. She is fully enlightened by the Supreme Lord himself. So what a position. How fortunate we are to have access to the feelings of Mother Devahuti and to bear witness to her realization. So So in the next verse, this is verse 5. How are we going? Okay. Verse 5, she says, "My dear Lord, you have assumed this body in order to diminish the sinful activities of the fallen and to enrich their knowledge in devotion and liberation. Since these sinful people are dependent on your direction, by your own will, you assume incarnations as a boar and other forms. Similarly, you have appeared in order to distribute transcendental knowledge to your dependents." So in this verse, in this prayer, we're hearing Devahuti expressing a few things, expressing a few different things here. She is citing the purpose for the Lord's appearance. As we know from Bhagavad Gita, why does Krishna appear? He appears to give pleasure to the devotees. He appears to get rid of the demons. He appears to reestablish principles of religion. Devahuti here, she is stating that the Lord appears in order to diminish the sinful activities of the fallen souls and to enrich their knowledge and devotion. So she is stating the purpose for the appearance of the Lord. So she is glorifying him, as glorifying his kindness. When I was thinking about this verse, I was thinking, Krishna is so kind. He's so merciful that he assumes different forms, different bodies, just to do these things, just to enrich people's knowledge and devotion, to give devotion to him, and to diminish sinful activities. So Krishna is so kind. He is, as we've been hearing just in these few prayers, he is the source of all creation. He is the master of all energies. And as Devahuti says, his energies are working everything. He personally has nothing to do. But what does he choose to do? He chooses to appear in his many different incarnations and forms. Why? To give mercy, to diminish sinful reactions, to give people devotion, to give people a chance to perform devotional service. So this is the compassion of the Supreme Lord. And Devahuti is expressing that fully here. She says, "You have appeared in order to distribute transcendental knowledge to your dependents." Dependents including her, that she was dependent on her son, she was dependent on Kapila Dev. Dependents including us, that actually we are always dependent. That is our natural position. The living entity in this material world, us little jivas, we are always dependent. And the only little choice we have is what we're going to depend on. Who are we going to be dependent on? So we know from Shastra that the living entity, the jiva, is described as tatashta shakti, that we have this capacity to be either underneath the control of the material energy or underneath the control of the spiritual energy. That's all we can do. We're always dependent. We're always under the control of one of Krishna's energies. But which one will we choose? And that is our decision. That is our decision at every moment of every day. We're always deciding, where do I want to be now? Do I want to be under Krishna's internal energy, or do I want to be under Krishna's external energy? And in either case, we're bound up. And in thinking about this, I was thinking, when we're under the control of the material energy, then as Srila Prabhupada explains so many times, it's like we're bound up by ropes. Sati and I was reading Bhagavad Gita to her yesterday for Gita Jayanti, and we came across this word entangled. And she said, "Mummy, what does entangled mean?" And so we got like a cloth and I wrapped it around her like a rope, and so that's entangled, you can't get out. And she's like, "Oh, okay." So she understood. But this is what we become underneath the material energy. We become entangled. We become bound up, as if bound by strong ropes. And this is an example used in Shastra a lot. Bound by the ropes of the material energy. On the flip side, When we're under the control of the spiritual energy, we're also bound up. But what is the bind? We're bound up with love. We're bound up by love. We're actually entangled in a loving relationship with Krishna. We are always in this position where we are dependent, we are controlled. As much as those words are really distasteful to our sense of independence, that's actually the fact. And we do, as Srila Prabhupada also describes, we do have our minute independence, our minute free will, where we can choose, okay, which way am I going to be bound up? That's basically our choice. So will I be bound up under the ropes of the material energy, or will I be bound up in love for Krishna? So a Devahuti is expressing her gratitude to the Lord, her wonder that you've assumed all these different forms just to give your mercy, just to give these sinful people a chance to learn about devotion, to come to a point of knowledge, and to actually to save them. That's why you appear. So this is a very wonderful verse, a very deep verse about the Lord's appearance. And she's placing herself as a dependent, that you have distributed this knowledge to me. I am your dependent. We have many examples in Shastra about the devotees in a position of great dependence, and then the mercy of the Lord, the reciprocation of the Lord, the appearance of the Lord. And very famous is Prahlad Maharaj and Lord Nrsingadev, that he was so dependent that regardless whatever he was going through, he was simply remembering the Lord, and then the Lord appeared. We have the example of Advaita Acharya, as he was so dependent, he was just calling and calling and calling so loud that the Lord appeared as Lord Chaitanya. Another one of the Lord's reasons for appearing was the calling of Advaita Acharya, because Advaita Acharya could see the devotees, they were trying so hard. These contemporaries of Mahaprabhu, the devotees who came before him, they were really trying to give Krishna consciousness to people, but they could see people were just not interested. And so Advaita Acharya, with so much pain in his heart and compassion in his heart for all the living entities, he began his worship with such determination, with such dependency. And from his sincere calling, then the Lord appeared. So we see this relationship between dependence and then the appearance of the Lord, and the appearance of the Lord also meaning receiving the Lord's mercy. So we may also experience that in our own lives, and it's a very, very powerful experience to have that in your devotional life, that in times of great dependency, when we really try to call out to the Lord, to really deeply not act independently, but just really deeply, oh Krishna, what do you want from me? How can I serve? I don't have anything else but you. And when we really when that mood becomes very strong, then it's a wonderful experience to see how Krishna reciprocates. And Krishna is always ready to reciprocate with us. Every tiny little step we can take towards him, even just that beginning of that feeling of dependency, even if it's just a tiny bit, we'll see how much Krishna reciprocates with that by giving his mercy. And that is the Lord's appearance. It comes in many, many different ways. And now we'll go on to text 6 and text 7. Now these are very famous verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, and they describe the process of devotional service, particularly chanting, and we see Devahuti's realization of the whole process of devotional service. If we remember from the third canto, Kapila Dev, he goes through so many different instructions for his mother, all about the intricacies of material nature and how it's all working, goes through several chapters of really intricate knowledge. And then he has chapters explaining the process of devotional service. Very, very wonderful chapters in the Bhagavatam. So we see here Devahuti's understanding and glorification of the process of devotional service. So she says to Kapila Dev in the 6th verse, to say nothing of the spiritual advancement of persons who see the Supreme Lord face to face. Even a person born in a family of dog eaters immediately becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if he once utters the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or chants about him, hears about his pastimes, offers him obeisances, or even remembers him. So Devahuti is stating here, okay, let's put aside for a moment those persons who actually see you face to face. Their spiritual advancement is undeniable. Their spiritual advancement is inexplicable. Let's look at this. Even people who are so degraded and so low-born, they can become elevated simply by chanting, hearing, offering obeisances, or remembering you. So we have imbibed in this verse our process of devotional service, our key processes of performing devotional service: hearing, chanting, offering obeisances, remembering the Lord. And this is a verse Srila Prabhupada goes into in the purport so much about Brahminical qualification by birth. And this is a verse that destroys that misconception. But let's try and look at this. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, he explains in the purport that by chanting the holy name, people can become so swiftly cleared from sinful reactions. And this is not a small thing. This is a very deep glory of chanting the holy name, that despite our countless births of performing sinful activities, simply by chanting the holy name, then those sinful activities can be eradicated. And Prabhupada talks about how this chanting needs to be performed, and he uses the word offenseless. Yes, that our chanting, that if we, Prabhupada says very nicely, I'll just read the sentence. A person born in a family of the low caste, which is accustomed to eat dogs, is so positioned due to his past sinful activities. But by chanting or hearing once in pureness or in an offenseless manner, he is immediately relieved of the sinful reaction. So, and Prabhupada says not only that, not only is he relieved from the reaction of his sinful activities, but he immediately achieves the result of all purificatory processes. So not only does chanting wash away all of our sinful reactions, it actually establishes us in a position of purity, that we have actually undergone all of these purificatory processes. As such a remarkable thing. that Prabhupada says here that simply by chanting Hare Krishna, he immediately becomes purified and becomes as good as the most learned Brahmana. So, of course, this was and perhaps still is maybe in some areas a contentious issue that in India, that Westerners could be given Brahminical initiation and to be recognized as Brahmanas. And but we see within our parampara, we see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very, very strong against this misconception of being a Brahmana by birth. That Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, and he says very, very clearly, it is our activity. Yes, that's the qualification, that we're not simply something by birth. So by birth, we may be a dog eater. By birth, you may be a Brahmana. However, what is your activity? And if your activities are of such a purifying manner as chanting the holy name and engaging in the Lord's devotional service, then you actually supersede that Brahminical position by birth. And that is a very remarkable thing. And Srila Prabhupada was very strong on this. He saw his disciples, his followers, as qualified, because by Shastra they're qualified Vaishnavas, even a higher qualification than the Brahmana. And we see in the life of Srila Haridas Thakur, we see how he was accepted by Lord Chaitanya himself, by Advaita Acharya, all these very high-born, high-class personalities. He was accepted as Namacharya. He was accepted as the perfect chanter of the holy name. He was accepted as pure. And yet he always kept himself in that humble position. He would never enter into the Jagannath Puri temple. He would always stay away, and he would offer respect to Lord Jagannath by seeing the chakra on the temple. But Devahuti, she continues, and she says, "Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. Even if born in the family of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your lordship, they must have bathed at holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required." So we're hearing here from Devahuti that the value of chanting the holy name, the qualification of a person who can actually who chants. We may think it's an easy thing, we chant Hare Krishna on the street and everybody has the opportunity to chant in response or to hear the holy name. But to hear the holy name and to chant the holy name is such a rare opportunity. It's an opportunity, Devahuti is explaining, it's a glorious opportunity, that to be able to chant the holy name, all these other processes of purification are done. They must have been done. And Srila Prabhupada, he says here in the purport that to eradicate doubts in the minds of the unbelievers, because somebody might think, well, chanting the holy name, how can this be so glorious? How can this be so important? And how can it elevate one to the position of even higher than a high-class Brahmana? How is that possible? So Prabhupada says, to eradicate this doubt, this verse affirms that the stage of chanting the holy name is not sudden, but that the chanters have already performed all kinds of Vedic rituals and sacrifices. It is not very astounding, Prabhupada says, for no one in this life can chant the holy name of the Lord unless he has passed all lower stages, such as performing the Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, studying the Vedas, and practicing good behavior like the Aryans. All this must have first been done. This is a very interesting point, isn't it? Just as a student in a law class is to be understood to have already graduated from general education, anyone who is engaged in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, must have already passed all the lower stages. So there we have it. And we are so fortunate as to be able to chant the holy name of the Lord. But again, how? How are we chanting the holy name of the Lord? And Srila Prabhupada, he makes a really interesting point here in this purport, that we should be chanting to please the Supreme Lord. And he describes, I found this really interesting. Prabhupada describes that it is not that we need to understand the whole procedure. I'll read what he says so that I get it right. Prabhupada says one does not even have to chant the holy name and understand the whole procedure, namely the offensive stage, offenseless stage, and the pure stage. If the holy name is sounded on the tip of the tongue, it is also sufficient. So we can take that sentence, and then a few sentences after that, Srila Prabhupada says that if one takes the holy name and compares it to the names of a demigod, for example, then he is an offender. So we have these two sides, that even if we don't fully understand the whole chanting process, we can still gain the benefit from chanting as long as we're not offending. We may not have a very deep understanding or deep realization about the holy name, but it is still all its effectiveness is there as long as we are not committing offenses. If we're committing offenses, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is like that mad elephant comes into the garden and rips it all to shreds. So chanting the holy name is a simple process, but it is a very deep process. I was just speaking with a devotee about this today, that she was expressing that after so many years of chanting Hare Krishna, 30 plus years, her realization is that it's a very simple process, but it simply gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is our whole process of Krishna consciousness. It's actually very simple. Prabhupada says simple for the simple, yes? But it is very, very deep. We don't want to have take it as a simple process and simply slide along the surface and stay very superficial. We want to be able to dive into the waves of the nectar of devotion. And so Srila Prabhupada, all throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, he gives instructions on chanting. And this, Prabhupada says here in this particular purport that the holy name has to be chanted to please the Supreme Lord, not for any sense gratification or any other purpose. And that if this pure mentality is there, then that chanter is not only glorified himself, but he becomes competent to deliver others. And this is the potency of the holy name, and this is the importance of our mood, our intention when we chant, that we want to chant to please the Supreme Lord. We don't want to chant for any other purpose. Of course, when we begin chanting, we may chant for many reasons, but to advance in the chanting process, then our motivation for chanting must deepen. Our motivation for chanting must deepen into one that we're trying to please Krishna, that we really want to develop our relationship with Krishna. And we have our perfect example of a bhakta, of the performer of devotional service in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he teaches us by his own example how to chant the holy name. And we have in the Antya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita his Shikshastakam verses. And I just wanted to read the first two. I'm going to read the translation as it is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's the wording, maybe it's slightly different, but it has the same meaning as what we may know from the songbook. So the first verse, I'll just do the English. Let there be all victory for the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna, which can cleanse the mirror of the heart and stop the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence. That chanting is the waxing moon that spreads the white lotus of good fortune for all living entities. It is the life and soul of all education. The chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life. It gives a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. And then the second verse. My Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, in your holy name there is all good fortune for the living entity, and therefore you have many names, such as Krishna and Govinda, by which you expand yourself. You have invested all your potencies in these holy names, and there are no hard and fast rules for remembering them. My dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen conditioned souls by liberally teaching your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. This is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, best chanter. And yet he's expressing his feelings like this. But these verses, and I really love the English translation here from Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it's very full. Where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expresses this, that everything is there within your holy name. And this is what Devahuti is expressing here also. Everything is there within your holy name. It diminishes all sinful reactions. It lifts people up to such an exalted position. Everything is there. And yet, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I'm so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. This is the result of committing offenses. As of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not committing offenses when he's chanting, but he is expressing the mood of a bhakta, of a devotee. And this is the result. And this is why Srila Prabhupada uses this word offenseless. That even if we don't fully understand the whole process of chanting, still it needs to be done in an offenseless way. It needs to be done in a pure way for us to get the effect, because Krishna is his holy name, as we understand from Shastra. But this is the key point. I feel this for myself so much. This is the key issue, that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve real attachment for chanting. So as Srila Prabhupada teaches us through Bhagavatam, through Chaitanya Charitamrita, we just need to perform our devotional service very carefully. It is simple, but we need to be careful that we're not committing offenses. Because when we fall into committing offenses, then regardless of whatever we may be able to do externally in Krishna consciousness, that internal attachment for Krishna, that real motivation to want to love Krishna and serve Krishna, it is going to be weak at best. It's going to be weak, and will be very hard to maintain our Krishna conscious practice if we're committing offenses. And as we know, the biggest offense is offending devotees. So this is always something to be meditated on and deepened in our own life, in every devotee's life. This is all of our concern, that we're not committing offenses to the holy name. We're not committing offenses to Krishna's devotees. And in that way, if we conduct ourselves in the proper way, then Krishna will allow us to stay in the association of devotees. Krishna will allow us to chant his holy name. Otherwise, he will take away that most glorious opportunity. And of course, there's no loss or diminution, but we don't want to hang around here in the material world longer than we have to. So best that we perform our devotional service in such a way that we catch Krishna's attention. So the final verse from Mother Devahuti is an ecstatic verse. She expresses, I believe, my Lord, that you are Lord Vishnu himself under the name of Kapila, and you are the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme Brahman. The saints and sages, being freed from all the disturbances of the senses and the mind, meditate upon you. For by your mercy only can one become free from the clutches of the three modes of material nature. At the time of dissolution, all the Vedas are sustained in you only. So again, we hear her wonderful expression of the Lord's position. She understands, she realizes actually Kapila, who took birth from my abdomen, is the Supreme Lord Vishnu. And she winds up her prayers there. And Srila Prabhupada says that she didn't want to prolong her prayers. So we hear these just 6 prayers, very succinct, but very, very deep and full of her realization. And after offering these wonderful prayers to the Supreme Lord Kapila, then he also leaves. And she executes devotional service. And although she was in a very opulent situation, surrounded by all kinds of wealth and opulence, she became completely unattached. She became completely renounced. And she was fixed in devotional service. She was fixed in the remembrance of the Lord. And she attained spiritual perfection. And that place at which she attained spiritual perfection became a holy tirtha. So we see, just a glimpse in 1 hour what we can do. A glimpse into Devahuti, her qualities, her character, her realization, and her practice of devotional service. And I found it quite striking myself that out of 6 verses, 6 prayers, 2 of them is this wonderful glorification of chanting the holy name of the Lord. So what this emphasis there, and how that chanting process is so purifying that it elevates everyone, that can elevate anyone. There's no material disqualification for practicing Krishna consciousness. No one is too fallen. No one. So thank you very much for asking me to speak tonight. And I really appreciate having the association of the devotees, even if it's just in a little box on the computer. But it's very nice to see you all. And I really hope and pray that we can all sit together in front of Shri Shri Radha Giridhari and hear Srimad Bhagavatam together very, very soon. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai, jai.
Thank you very much,
Mataji ki jai.
Grace, Acyuta, Bhava, Mataji. Such a wonderful class. We'd like to open the forum for any comments or questions. We still have some time. Dear devotees, please come forward this time. Krishna Mataji, I'll kick off questions. It says there are no rules and regulations for chanting the holy name, but then you have these 10 rules for not committing the offense to the holy name. So it seems like a contradiction. Can you please explain?
So, yes, you're right. It explains, there are no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name, meaning we can chant any time and place, anywhere. Any of the bona fide names of the Lord can be chanted. So this is what that one means, that there are no hard and fast rules for chanting. Just as we see, our Acharya, who was it, who sat in the latrine, to chant. He didn't want to be disturbed while he was chanting. So he was chanting in an impure place. Yes, but there was no hard and fast rule around that. In terms of committing offenses, it's not in contradiction to there not being any hard and fast rules for chanting. So we can chant anywhere, any place, any time, any bona fide name of the Lord. But what is the meaning of chanting? Why do we chant? We chant to please Krishna. Yes, we chant to develop our relationship with Krishna. So therefore, we don't want to chant in an offensive way. There's just that motivation. Why do we chant? That's the important part. And that's not any, contradiction to not having any rules about chanting, but it's more, what is our mood? What is our intention? And if we want to actually advance in Krishna consciousness, that's where we need to pay attention to. And that's what is important in chanting the holy name. As Srila Prabhupada says, we need to chant to please the Lord. And that's the main point there. So I don't see it as a contradiction. See those two things go side by side. That we can chant the holy name any place, anywhere, anytime, but we always try to chant it with a mood of wanting to develop love for Krishna. Does that answer your question, Prabhu? Or can you add something? You can...
No, that's very nice, yes. So there are these rules and regulations are there to enhance our love for Krishna, so we don't wave around, we don't go off the path. It's like a boundary line. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Well, another just comment. It's amazing that Mother Devahuti is saying that the Lord came and resided in her abdomen and took birth from there. And so this concept of the Lord having a mother or any parents, it's like anathema to the Abrahamic religions. So it's just amazing how she explains that the Lord can do so many wonderful things, like floating in the ocean and sucking his thumb, actually. But then he can also take birth from, as he said, not qualified women like herself. So that's quite amazing. I mean, one side we have the other religions that don't accept any form of the Lord, and what to speak of having a mother or a relative. So maybe you'd like to amplify this a little bit.
Well, I think you explained that very nicely, Prabhu. Yes, it's true. We have such an intimate knowledge of the Supreme Lord. That yes, the Lord has relationships. The Lord has a mother. The Lord has a father. The Lord lays down on a banyan leaf in the waters of devastation and sucks his toe to taste the nectar. We have such a different conception of the Supreme Lord, such a full conception of the Supreme Lord, that the Lord he's the reservoir of all rasa. He's a reservoir of all relationships, of all taste. So I was always, I am and I always have been very impressed by that, actually, in coming to Krishna consciousness, not knowing anything about Hare Krishna philosophy, and then learning about Krishna and going into the temple. I remember going into the temple in Brisbane, in Australia, was the first temple that I went to. And I had these pictures on the walls, and he's blue, and he's a baby, and then he's over here, and then there's Lord Chaitanya. I was so confused. Where did Krishna's hair go, and why is he a different color? But it's just such a full conception of the Supreme Lord, that the Lord's always in relationship, and that's wonderful thing. And that every single living entity, we have our eternal relationship with Krishna in any one of these rasas. And that's, yeah, very, very grateful for that understanding, actually.
So how would one explain this, the Lord having a mother or parents, to a person who doesn't believe in such things?
Have some prasadam on hand, and you know, I think it's Lord Chaitanya's method. You know, have kirtan, prasadam, and gradually introduce philosophy, because just trying to hit someone with, well, Krishna has a mother and a father is going to be very difficult for someone to just accept that. We need that purification, the association of devotees, taking prasadam, developing friendship with the devotees, and hearing in the association of devotees, and then we're able to, by Krishna's mercy, you know, become engaged in devotional service. By that engagement in devotional service, when we hear these things, Krishna will give us the proper realization. Otherwise, just off the bat with nothing, no pre-qualification, that's a very difficult thing to understand or explain to someone in an understandable way, I think.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you for it.
Anybody else has anything to add, comment, question? Please, still have some time.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have just a doubt. I want to clear it. What I know that Lord never takes birth. He appears.
Mm-hmm.
So here, what I just heard that Lord came to Devahuti's abdomen. So he took birth, or he appeared like Krishna?
Well, we always say that, yes, that the Lord appears, because you're right, you know, Krishna doesn't take his birth in any kind of ordinary manner. He appears. So Mother Devahuti, she is expressing her wonder that he has taken shelter in her abdomen and has appeared in that way. So there may be the words used that he has taken birth from my abdomen, but not taken birth in any kind of ordinary sense. The Lord always appears. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Anybody comments or question, please? No? Okay, there's not be any comments. I'll request His Grace Narayana Prabhu to move a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna dear devotees, please accept my respectful obeisances.